Hi everybody, welcome to today's video tutorial. I'm working with a finished pillow top and a finished pillow back, and I've already installed the zipper and it all looks great. And this week I'm going to bind the pillow with the binding that we made in last week's video. So if you missed that video, I'll link it down below, and let's get started. So I've already trimmed that pillow back and pillow top to match each other, and I'm just pinning my zipper closed. It's open right now, and I just want to make sure that when I sew the binding on, that my zipper doesn't come apart in the middle there. Okay, so I'm going to use my sewing machine to attach my binding from the front. I'm not going to hand sew it. So when that is the case, I'm going to attach my binding on the back of the pillow. And I'm starting my binding way down at the bottom. I'm leaving most of that side open, and I'll have this long tail so that I can attach my binding when I come back around. This part's really important. So when I take it to the machine, I'm going to start right down here where my clip is, and then I'm only going to sew a few stitches before I stop, and I'm going to turn my binding. And I'm just giving you a little demo here, but I'll show you again a few times at the machine because we have 4 corners to get around. But I fold the binding away from the project, creating this 45-degree angle and having it the top edge perpendicular to the binding, and then I fold it back on itself and attach it going this way. And I'll show you again at the machine, but I wanted to give you a brief overview here. Okay, so here I'm at my machine for the actual sewing. I'm using my 1/4 inch foot. I lower the foot and I'm just going to make a few stitches, but I am going to start with a back stitch, and then I'm going down to the edge of the project and I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch away, and I'm actually going to measure it with my ruler. You can eyeball it, but I'm just going to use my ruler here. So I just put my ruler on the edge of the project and measure 1/4 of an inch away, and then make a mark on my binding so that I can continue sewing to that mark, and then I'll turn and I'll sew off the edge where the 1/4 inch is. And here's a close-up of my sewing foot, and you can see it has these lines on it, and the first line away from the needle is 1/8 of an inch, and then the second line is 1/4 of an inch. So if you get that line to the edge of your project, that's 1/4 inch, if you don't want to mark. And whether I've marked or just eyeballing, now I turn and I just sew off the edge. Okay, now I'm going to go around the corner again. So I fold my binding away from my project in towards the machine. I make sure I have a 45-degree angle and perpendicular across the top, and then I bring that fold back and I'll flip my project around and continue sewing down to the next corner. Okay, so I've come around my last corner, and I'm just going to take a few stitches, and then I'm going to back stitch and stop sewing, and I want to make sure that I have 2 long tails, one from when I started and one from when I'm finishing here. And now with both my pieces laying nice and flat, I'm going to make a mark about halfway down on the overlap of both pieces. And then take the top binding and open it up so the right side is facing up. And then find the other mark on the bottom section of binding. And I'm going to fold my pillow in half. So this is why we need longer tails on the binding. And then I'm going to be able to put my binding right sides together and line up those marks. And once I have those lines together, I'm going to use a pin and I'm going to go right into those marks just to hold them together. And once they're held together in the middle, now I'll just pin on either side of that middle pin so that I can take the middle pin out. And I'll use my chalk pencil again just to draw a line from corner to corner, or inside corner to inside corner, and then I'll sew along that diagonal line. And now that I've finished sewing, I'm going to straighten out my binding, and just before I trim those tails, just to make sure that my binding is lying flat, and it is, so I've done it correctly. Don't trim the tails until you check this, in case you need to get your seam ripper out and re-sew in case you turn something upside down or something. So mine looks pretty good. I'm going to trim those tails down to 1/4 inch, and again, just be really careful that you don't cut through your actual binding. And I'll open the seam, fold it over, and then I'm going to continue sewing and close it up, and the binding will be on the back of the pillow. There, my binding is on. I'm going to finger press it open before I flip it over and bring my binding to the front. So when I turn my binding to the front, I just want to make sure it's covering that stitch line. And then I'm going to start right there with a little back stitch and sew down to the corner. Okay, so here I am at the bottom corner, and I just flatten the side out and then I fold up the bottom, and you can see it's created a 45-degree angle there, and it's just like wrapping a present. And then I'm going to do a few stitches down. I'm actually just holding it with my awl here, and I'll do a few stitches down just to get on the very edge of that fold, and then I'll turn and I'll continue sewing. So I'm sewing very close to the edge of the binding to hold it down. And then go around each of the corners in the same way, and when I get to the very end, I'm going to turn that corner one more time, and I'll finish with the little back stitch. And that's it. My binding is attached. I use my sewing machine, and my stitching line looks pretty good on the back. Okay, so that's a bound pillow. I'm just stuffing it, getting my zipper closed there. And you can see it looks totally cute, and the binding is really awesome around the edge. I love the way it looks. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and come back next week for another great sewing video.